Welcome to my channel. On this channel, I discuss esoteric symbolism and connect it to astrotheology in the sky. So we're learning about the constellations, understanding how as above, so below is relating to our reality, and looking at all the monuments and the structures across the United States and how they're connected to the constellations. So on this video, I want to really focus on Washington, D.C.'s Washington Triangle. I've talked about it a lot through my videos, but I wanted to kind of bring it all together in one video, and also the Washington Monument and the Capitol building. So this is the triangle that's in Washington, and this is what George Washington, how he built Washington, D.C. around the symbolism to the spring triangle, which is in the sky. So there was this video on the history.com channel on YouTube explaining how George Washington had made the Washington Triangle when he was, creating Washington, D.C. and that it aligned to this spring triangle in the sky. So they had mentioned this on this history channel, and I was fascinated by it. And the Freemason was talking about how Virgo is, in this triangle, and that it was aligning over Washington, D.C. in mid-August. So here we have the spring triangle. You can see Virgo is in there. And so I was like blown away when they said this. And I tried to go back and find the video of it, and I can't find it now. They do have the series 4 of the, number 4 video of the series, but they don't have any of the other ones there. So I never saved the link, and I just can't find it. But I did have the screenshots, so that you can see this is on the History Channel, and this is what they were explaining. They also went in and explained about George Washington, the ceremony he did when they were building the White House. So I wanted to talk about that ceremony, and it's explained in this video. I'll drop the link for it. In the old video, they even had the painting, and they had made the triangle showing you how, the 3 hands were pointing to this triangle. So in my last video about the labyrinth and the sun in conjunction with Ariadne, which is Dionysus's wife, happening at this midnight blood moon on May 15th in 2022, if you put the azimuthal grid on stellarium, there's a portal at the North Pole and the South Pole. And in that portal, we have the constellation Boots, which is where Arcturus is, which is the White House. Okay, so you can see Boots here. He has like a scythe in his hand, like a little hook. So I want to go into 2 things. First, I had a comment about starfall, which is a bill that was passed in the U.S. Congress. And this number on the bill happens to be a number for a star that is right close to Boots. So that was like, okay, that's bizarre. So I think it's really important, the fact that this blood moon is happening with all these things aligning. The starfall is kind of like skyfall. Okay, and then you have that in the Bible, that the stars will fall when Christ returns, right? Or when this event happens. So it's all kind of matching biblically, also politically, and then happening in the sky. So as above, so below. So we need to go into the Boots constellation and really understand the history of Boots, and why did George Washington create the White House with it aligning to this constellation. This Congress bill is to do with American Freedom and Internet Access Act in 2021. But it's American freedom, so the word freedom. And this is what George Washington represents. He represents freedom. True is the name men have given him, the Bear Warden, threatening like he presses forward, as one does over a team of bullocks. So they're talking about the Bear Warden, and it comes from the word Arcturus. Arcturus is the Greek Arcturos, literally guardian of the bear. And then they're also talking about it being the wagon, the bull, and the cow. So Arcturus is Taurus, right? So this is when we have the sun and Ariadne in conjunction in Taurus at the time of the blood moon when Boots is in the north portal. Now the word Arcto is from meaning Arctic, so of the north. So the Ursa Major constellation, which is the big bear, the great bear. So you can see Boots right in the portal. Then you can see Ursa Major, which is the Big Dipper. And then the blue circle over here is Ursa Minor. That's the North Pole. But there's these two stars at the end of the tail of the dippers, like the Ursa Major and the Ursa Minor. They've been swapped on the Bohemian star list. So it's almost like the Big Dipper, you know, is supposed to represent Polaris, which would be interesting because it would be right in the North Portal at this blood moon, which is like the North Pole. So we're back to Christmas and the shamanic Amanita muscaria mushroom all tying into this. So the Bohemian stars are really important. So we have Spica, which is in Virgo. She holds the mirror. That's aligning to the Washington Monument. Arcturus, which is aligning to the White House. Alphecca is in Corona Borealis, which is really close to Boots. That's the corona that Ariadne wears. Ariadne is Dionysus's wife. She's in conjunction with the sun in Taurus. She's the keeper of the labyrinth and the bull. Okay, so these are all part of this story. And they're saying here that the Big Dipper, which the big bear, the Big Dipper, Ursa Major, is listed as one of the Bohemian stars in the image above, replacing Polaris in the little bear, Ursa Minor. So they're replacing it. So this star would be Alcade. So that's the tail of the big bear. So it's almost like it's representing the North Pole because Polaris is the North Pole and all the constellations circle around Polaris. Polaris stays in one place and everything circles around it. It's like a big wheel. To those born under Actrophallax Arcturus, Fortune herself makes bold to entrust her treasures so that the wealth of the monarchs and temple finance will be in their keeping. Custodianship is suitable endowment for the bear ward. They will be kings under kings and ministers of states, politicians, and be charged with the guardianship of the people or of the stewards of the grand houses. They will confine their business to the care of another's home. Strictly speaking, Arcturus is the star, but the name is used by ancient astrologers for the whole constellation of Boots. And for the star alone, it is often difficult to distinguish which of these authors are referring to. So what's interesting is it has to do because of the placement of being close to the North Star, right, Polaris. And then, you know, it's saying that it's the Grand House. So this is why the White House is aligning to the Boots constellation. Now, the word Actrophallax is also, the word phallax means protector. But it gets more interesting with this word. So to perceive, watch out for, right? The Lord. It's also loaf of bread. So it's warden, stewards, pigs, award, reward, guardian. For the Greek, the root is oros, which is like Horus. Okay, now pyrlos, they're saying here is guard, passage at the lower end of the stomach that opens into the duodenum. From Greek oros, a guard. In myth, Pylos is the gate to the underworld. Okay, so it's hilarious, you know. Oh my God, the whole thing about the underworld, right? everybody believes the underworld is hell. And how do you convince people that have been programmed for, centuries to believe that hell is underneath you and heaven is above you, when it's exactly the opposite in religions before Christianity? So it's like, anybody's going to say, oh my God, it's satanic. It's the White House is the gateway to the underworld. And it's really not. It's just the same as this Trevor Scott astral world that just happened with these 8 people being killed. Everybody's looking at it going, oh my God, it's a gateway into hell. It's a painting. It's because the ancients believed the inner earth was heaven. So it's like everything is backwards, and you can't convince people otherwise, like it's like something you have to come to on your own accord and let go of all your belief systems so that you can see the truth of the matter. Okay, so they created all this underworld imagery for this concert. There was like a spiral and a portal, and so they're saying like, this is going through the veil, right? So then these poor people look at this and go, this is going into hell. Look, there's a hell painting. But they don't understand the culture before Christianity. I know in Mexico, the tradition of having the mouth open and going into the inner earth is like really sacred. And I had a picture of the actual going into inner earth. They were the guardians of the inner earth, and it was a big mouth opening. But I found this one because I can't find the other one. But the point is, this is pre-Christianity. The inner earth was sacred. This is where the crystals are. This is where the fairy dust is. Where you can get to this ageless realm where you're always in good health and you're at inner peace, right? So it's not in the sky. This is how it was like pre-Christianity. So even in Hindu, in Krishna, the universe is inside of you. It's inside your mouth. It's like you have to go inward, right? And if you're still in judgment or angry with what's going on, feeling like you've had the wool pulled over your eyes and you feel like the fool, and then you're angry because people don't see it the same way as you, or you see that, all the religions are evil and satanic and they're terrible people. This is what this realm is about. It has to be half good and half evil so that you can transmute through your pain and then therefore see it as, well, if there was no evil, how would I experience this pain? How would I experience understanding that you have to work through pain so that you can help others with their pain? So it's like a big game, but you can't be in judgment of it all, right? It's like if you are, you still haven't worked through your inner stuff. Like if you're still angry, scared, depressed, mad that people aren't listening to you, you haven't let go of the matrix yet. You're still in the matrix and you're still wanting the matrix to do what you want it to do. And the masses are going to, because we're creators. So the masses want more security. They don't want to see the darkness, so therefore they have to see it more, right? And you can't get those people to see it your way because they need to experience that pain, right? So that they can eventually work through their pain. They need more darkness because being locked in their house or being forced to take a vaccine or whatever, that's not dark enough for them, okay? So it's like you have to understand it's all about letting go, right? Let it go, let it go. Yeah, that song, okay? This is, otherwise you're frozen, right? You're frozen or you let it go. So I even had a shirt with, a little blue man walking through the veil turning red, which that I find interesting because I always see it as it's red, that you need to go red to blue. But red represents black and blue represents light. So what I'm saying is they create all these ascension symbols, then they create drama, and everybody thinks that the whole event and all the symbols are evil. So that's how they're programming your brain. It's actually making you fear your own ability to be free. Okay, so here there's lots of history about the constellation being related to Orion. So even back in AD 370, called Orion, was a misunderstanding. They're saying Arcturus, called the Wain, who wheels on high. So it's like, you know, it's the North Pole, so that's where the wheel is turning from. But then they're also saying, you know, how can it be Orion? Well, the Orion constellation is like nowhere near there. And they're saying it's Horus, or Horus, of the Egyptians. So now they're saying in French here that Arcturus, or Louros, you know, that's to do with the bear. Because in French, Horus is bear, or Ors is bear. So the Wain is actually Charles Wain. It's to do with the Big Dipper. So in Old English, Charles, its Wain is wagon. Okay, so it's a wagon. So medieval times with Charlemagne, but originally with the nearby bright star Arcturus. So then it's called the plow in British and the dipper in America. Okay, so the Big Dipper is a wagon. The conformation of the 7 stars is no way resembles the animal. Indeed, the contrary. But he suggests the identification may have arisen from Aristotle's idea that its prototype was the only creature that dared invade the frozen north. So because it's to do with the North Pole, it's just because, you know, the polar bears. Okay, so that's why they called it, you know, the big bear. The Ursa Major is the big bear. So it's not about that. It's a freaking wagon. Among the Teutonic people, it seems to have been only a wagon, not a bear. Anglo-Saxon astronomy manual uses the Greek-derived Arctos, but mentions that unlearned men call it the Charles Wain. Oh, yeah, right. Unlearned men. Yeah, it's unlearned because they don't know it's about, you know, to do with a wagon, but they do, because the Charles Wain that's the etymology, ends up being wagon. So they mention here in an Anglo-Saxon manual of astronomy, it's in a weird language, right? So I wanted to decode this. They called it the Tungle de North Dala. And I wanted to understand what that meant. So it's actually pulling up as Icelandic, and it means the North Pump. And Tundle means moon, so heavenly body. So it's relating to the moon, lunatics. So then it gets even crazier, because they're saying, yeah, it all ties to King Arthur. Yep. Then they're saying, it suggests that it might originally have been Woden's wagon. So we're talking about Odin, right? And who showed up on the Washington Triangle at the Capitol building? It was Odin that sat in the chair. He has Odin tattoos all over him, and then he was at this celebration the previous year with a picture taken with Ragnarok. Okay, so he's tied to Ragnarok, which is Odin's, like, you know, war that he had. So yeah, it's just amazing. It's just all ties together. So there's also a thing called Odin's Wain, which would be like Charles Wain. It's a wagon, right? So they're using this in modern day. So Odin, the AIF, father of Norse mythology, was often said to travel around the world in a wagon, going from house to house and teaching the people his legacy, mainly lessons of hospitality, life, and how to worship the gods. He often appeared as an old vagabond with a wide-brimmed hat and gray hair that covered the eye socket. Okay, so, and then it says here, entry order. Having just reverted the order of entry, the plow, then the Big Dipper. So yeah, this is all to do with the Big Dipper. It's Odin's wagon. So it ties to Odin's wagon. It's amazing. So then they're saying the words bottle and boots when they say Icarus, when he had received the wine from his father Liber. Well, Liber is Pluto, right? Straightway, but full wineskins on a wagon. For this he was called Boots. Okay, so this is how the constellation is called Boots. It has to do with being a wagon and with wine. So Icarus also was a title of Boots, the name related to the story of a farmer, Icarus, who welcomed Dionysus to Arcturus, and in return received the gifts of the vine, or received the secret of the winemaking from the god. Icarus gave wine to the neighboring shepherds, but when they became intoxicated, they thought Icarus had poisoned them, and so they slew him. Lovely. Okay, so Boots could also relate to another mythical character named Icarus. So, you know, there's different stories, right? Icarus was famous for his death by falling into the Icarian Sea near Icaria, the island that still bears his name. He was the son of Daedalus, the master craftsman. According to Ovid's description of him, he appeared to have been a very young boy whose playful antics hindered his father's work. So then Aeneas made artificial wings for him and Icarus. And Icarus flew too close to the sun, melting the wax holding the artificial wings together, causing him to fall into the Icarian Sea and drown. So yeah, so it has to do with wings and ascending, you know, and the meaning of a mysterious child, the imp, is also means to furnish with wings. And it was used in the context of grafting new feathers onto the wings of a trained falcon or hawk to repair damage of increased flying capacity. And then here they're saying the word bottle from the Latin butus, or boots, cast or wineskin. So it has to do with wine. So I'm assuming the scythe in his hand is to cut the wine vines. With this Freemason history YouTube video, they still have the wine ceremony reenacted out, what George Washington did for the cornerstone of the Capitol building. Okay, so I want to get into that and what happened in that ceremony. It was a complete Freemason ritual. It was done in public. They had symbols that they used, and of course the wine was part of it. So it's always to the wine, right? And the wine is the ambrosia, the kumbamela, the nectar of the gods. And Dionysus is the god of wine, and his wife Ariadne is the keeper of the labyrinth that the bull, the Minotaur bull, is in. And then she ends up marrying Dionysus when she gets stranded on an island. I spoke about this in my last video. And the Corona Borealis constellation, that is very close to Boots, is the crown of Ariadne. Okay, so it's a big ceremony happening in the sky, all relates to the Washington Triangle. Okay, so that was all about the White House and Arcturus in the Boots constellation. Now, the Capitol building, U.S. Capitol, is in Leo, and that's a fixed star, one of the 4 fixed stars in the sky. Very important star because Leo is ruled by the sun, the only constellation ruled by the sun. And the Capitol building has the portal, right, that George Washington's in, and he's going through the portal. And this is where Odin showed up and sat in the chair. So the painting is called The Hypothesis of Washington. And in the painting, they have different planets represented by mythology. So they have Neptune. They also have Minerva, who's the goddess of the owl. They have Mercury. They have Vulcan. So there's lots of different characters in that painting, and obviously they're very important, otherwise they wouldn't be in the painting of the portal. So, you know, you can go and learn all about this painting. I'm always like trying to reference, you know, their positions in the sky. Ceres is there, the goddess of agriculture. She's the mother of Persephone, who ends up going into the underworld, right? So she's an important character. So we just have to keep an eye on them. And when I go through next year's blood moons, like the 2 of them, there's one in May and one in November, And I'm also going to map out other positions and dates in next year. And I'll, go through all of their positions. The ceremony for the laying of the cornerstone for the Capitol building was a true Masonic ritual. They said here, George Washington, on September 18th, President of the United States, George Washington and his entourage crossed the Potomac River to arrive in Washington. That river is super important too. It has a mythology going back to the Native Americans. But the ritual was really symbolic to the labyrinth and to Dionysus. It was really symbolic to Ariadne and Dionysus. Washington, accompanied by 3 worshipful masters carrying sacrifices of corn, which is the harvest, wine, which is ascension, it's nectar of the gods, and oil, which would be olive oil, which has to do with Athena. Athens is named after her because she presented the olive tree. Okay, then struck the stones 3 times with a gavel, as prescribed by Masonic custom. Washington exited the trench to the ritual, chanting by the assembled masons, and a 15-gun salute from the Alexandria Volunteer Artillery. Clark then delivered a short invocation, after which a 500-pound ox was slaughtered and roasted. So they killed the bull. Okay, they killed the bull, just like Ariadne, her hero came in and killed the bull so she could be free. So they did this whole ritual. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God. So this really ties to the blood moon at midnight in May. So it's really amazing that it's all linking to the sky. So I remember when I watched the original video where it was showing the ceremony, the Freemason man that was talking about the ceremony, he mentioned acacia, the tree, was used in the ceremony, and also balsamic vinegar. So it was mixed with the oil. So they created this kind of ritual with these different ingredients. And then they're saying in this video that they're using special mixing, they're mentioning that there was a mixing of stuff, but they don't say what's in it. It's unfortunate I don't have that other video. Acacia is really important with Freemasonry, and you can see here that George Washington planted it in his garden at Mount Vernon. It has a historic significance. So in ancient Egypt, well, they're saying here it was used for hemorrhoids, but that's not the whole significance of it. Acacia repeatedly mentioned in the book of Exodus, perhaps referring to Vachatelli tortilius, previously known as acacia, and it's in the tabernacles. It's the construction of the tabernacle. In Exodus 25:10, acacia wood is mentioned as the construction material of the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, so the Ark of the Covenant is really important in all of Ascension, right? So acacia is mentioned in ancient Egypt proverb referred to by Amenhotep II. If you lack a gold battle axe inlaid with bronze, a heavy club of acacia wood will do. So it has significance. The wood of acacia has significance. And it's not a coincidence that the Trump store is selling an acacia round board. The acacia is a symbol of immortality and resurrection. The acacia tree has been associated with Freemasonry for centuries and is featured prominently in the organization's most famous symbol. Here's a Freemason video explaining the importance of its relationship to immortality. The Rosicrucians have this website about the red powder and the archangels. They're DMT, that's Sir Edward Kelly Angelic Alchemy. So this has to do with John Dee and Kelly. And, they were, going into other dimensions and speaking to, you know, angels. So this article is talking about how they were using the DMT from the acacia tree to create that. This blog is created by Pan Sofer. So Pan, like I said before, the Pan god is really important. You have to go watch the Pan movie. This Pan movie, not the Pan Labyrinth. And I'm going to decode that movie to the moons for next year. Okay, so but I don't want to ruin the movie for you, so you need to go watch the Pan movie. It's really, really important, and it ties to the blood moons. So this is acacia gum resin. So it's almost like a salt. Now, Carl Jung knew about this. So the Jung suggests that the white powder does indeed answer to gum arabic. It's called gum arabic. It was perhaps obvious then that the red powder identified by Kuntara as red gum, or as a resin of the wise, must correspond to the rooty DMT-rich layer of bark inside the roots of acacia. So it's in the roots. That's why it's always like, I keep saying, like, you have to connect to your roots, and you got to go into the earth, and the tree of life, you got to connect to the bottom of the tree of life. Now I understand it even more. It's not just connecting to memory. It's actually the pathway to DMT and connecting to this other realm through the roots of this tree. So this tree is almost like, you could say, the tree of life. And this tree grew in Jerusalem. And so there's a whole history. If you go watch that video about it, they'll talk to you all about it and how it all relates to biblical, texts and everything. So now he's saying, as we've shown elsewhere in the researches into the alchemico-masonic rites of Gagliostro, Melissanito, and others, the treatment of the acacia as the primal matter of alchemy and its produce, DMT, as a legendary philosopher's stone of resin of the wise, is not without precedence. So there you go. Okay, it's the tree of knowledge, I guess, but it's the root. It's not the fruit, it's the root. So acacia is the primal matter. My child, you are receiving the primal matter. Learn the great God created before man, the primal matter of that he then created man to possess it and be immortal. Man abused it and lost it, but it still exists in the hands of the elect of God. And from a single grain of this precious matter becomes the projection into infinity. So we get the infinity, right? Pi Day again with that blood moon in 2025 on Pi Day. It doesn't take much to see that the Gagliostra here describes is nothing short of entheogenic potential of acacia wood. I guess this is why Trump has it in his store. So here they're talking about the cubical stone, which is interesting because it's the cornerstone, right? That has to do with the ritual. So it's the cubical stone. Is the alkaline universal salt. The master degree speaks to us of the acacia found upon Hiram's grave. This is the true first matter from which the philosopher creates their treasures. It is the true light of the world, of which glorious Hiram shall rise again under the guise of the Redeemer. It is the burning coal of which Isaiah and Ezekiel speak, of which must be prepared in accordance with the secret system of the wise men of the old and the philosophers. So this is a secret. This is a secret that is kept through Freemasonry, that it's DMT that activates your ability to connect to God, right? And I'm assuming when this event happens and the sun creates a big gamma ray and everything goes crazy on this planet because of the magnetic poles changing, all this, I do believe the sun will activate people that are at a certain frequency of theta, brainwave, and it will activate to the point where you can get this DMT experience naturally. And also, with this being in darkness, you can be in darkness for 3 days, just no light. it will create a DMT experience for you. So here's a symbolic ritual that they do. I'm not going to go into it all, but you guys can read it if you want. But it's all tying into the ritual, you know, of having to be in the dark, and, you know, they get unclothed. They have to take one shoe off, and that's to do with your souls. And they go through this experience in a darkened room. It has to do with DMT, and it's also to do with going inward, right? That you need to go inward. Into the darkness, or the womb of earth, in a way, the inner earth, is all relating to going in to you, instead of looking for your answers on the outside of you, or looking for somebody to come and save you. Now, they mentioned that they use balsamic vinegar as well, and I do believe the reason they're using balsamic, you know, has to do with mixing with the oil, which is the olive oil tree, which has to do with Athena. But the balsamic phase of the moon is when it's going into the darker phase. It's the waning of the moon, right? And it's like a crescent. Well, it's not called a crescent. It's called the waning moon, but it's also known as balsamic. So this is when you go into the darkness so that you can be reborn, right? You have to go into the darkness, and then the seed grows from the darkness. The seed grows from the earth. So I think that's part of the reason. It has to do with the moon phases. And I'll go into this about all the moon phases next year, because I do believe they're really important, and I want to explain how they're all tied into the mythology. So I found a Newsweek article where they end up talking about Trump and balsamic vinegar. So they go on about bashing him and, you know, saying how bad he is. But as long as he was just peddling Trump balsamic vinegar, nobody seems to mind. And then it says here, how that many people mind, we discover that there is very little we can do other than move to Canada. Okay, so they're just like, you know, going on about, but they mentioned the balsamic vinegar, right? But this is in the Bible to do with the vinegar. So the biblical passage, I think at the end here, it says, I looked for thirst, and they gave me vinegar to drink. Their table before them became a snare. And when they are in peace, may it become a trap. So it's like, you know, the people that are asleep, they're like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eye. So is the lazy one to those who send him. So it's like they're basically talking about the, you know, the unawoken. And you have to remember, Trump had this Odin, well, he had the wild protest on Odin's Wild Hunt Day, which is January 6th, the day of Epiphany, right? So it was all tied to the Capitol building, to this portal. It was a total ritual to the portal of ascension. You know, somebody died, yes, because it's like to create drama, so that you see it as evil, right? So you see it all as evil, so that you don't see your true freedom. You just see it as all like, oh, it's all terrible what happened. You know, for sure it was terrible. Somebody died. But what I'm saying is the symbolism attached to that trauma is not negative. It's positive. They've created a photograph from a painting of him doing the ritual. And I found it interesting because there's the hook, the claw coming down. And, you know, I talked about Libra, right close to Scorpio, which has the tree of life. It's also the gateway, is known as the claw. And this was in the, you know, Toy Story, Infinity and Beyond, you know, with Buzz Lightyear. It all connects. So what I'm saying is it's always being mirrored at us, but it's tying to this root foundation of, can you get out of the labyrinth? Or is the bull keeping you there? Are you able to leave? You know, can you see through the illusion and get out and get your Ariadne crown, your Corona Borealis crown, and walk away? So when this celebration was going on, the sun was on Zavi Java. Zavi Java is on the shoulder of Virgo. And then this is all happening in the triangle, right? In the spring triangle that they're creating the Washington around. So then Bacchus, which is Dionysus, is close to the Spica star, which is the Washington Monument. And then Uranus, which is heaven, which has to do with ascension, it's the Phoenix, is in conjunction with Regulus, which is the star for the Capitol building. So heaven is on where the Capitol building is being made, right? And, you know, that's crazy. And that means Rex, it means your crown. It's alchemy. And that's why they created the Capitol building there with the portal, because that is your crown, your sun crown, like your Leo crown, right? Which is the sun is what activates your body. So there you go. It's like, what amazing. They had lined it to the sky. So Bacchus, Dionysus, they're all the same, right? Liber, they're really Pluto. But here's an old painting, The Discovery of Honey by Bacchus. So honey and milk and honey has to do with the wine and honey. It's the same reference, right? The milk or the honey. There's also Silenus. Silenus is the father of Bacchus or Dionysus, and he rides a donkey. Now they had that in the Fantasia movie when Bacchus, you know, was riding his donkey or had his donkey with him, but the donkey was a unicorn. Okay, so because the unicorn means freedom. You know, you don't get on Noah's Ark, you don't get on the ship. Okay, so it's all, the symbolism's all there. So the honey ties to Trump. Well, of course, the wine ties to Trump, right? Because he has a winery. And you can go online and buy a few accessories, but of course they have a honey collection. Of course they do. Why wouldn't they, right? It has to tie to Bacchus, and Dionysus ties to the honey. And then they have this jewelry, all to do with the bees and the honey. And now his wine is named for the New World wines. So we've got the New World, you know, which is where do you want to go? The whole thing about the New World Order, the New World Order. Don't look at it as negative. Yes, there's going to be a New World Order, but you're in the New World. You're not in the New World Order, right? You're in the New World, just like how his wine is called, the New World. Ternanog, Shambhala, Agatha. It's the inner earth. It happens, you get there through the North Pole. You know, you have to believe. You have to believe. You have to believe in Santa. You have to believe in the magic. If you don't believe in magic, you'll never see it. So if you want to escape this end of times, you have to believe. Have love in your heart. No fear. Okay, so that was the Capitol building. And now the Washington Monument is to do with the Spica star. And this is all to do with the Tree of Life and the Nectar of the Gods. I want to go into a bit of the history of the Washington Monument, but it's really a ritual, and with the Lincoln Memorial ritual they did on April 9th, when the opera singer, so on Unicorn Day, which is April 9th, National Unicorn Day, they had this big ceremony with Marian Anderson. She sings Eva Maria at the Lincoln Memorial. Okay, and there was 75,000 people there watching her, and it was all because she wasn't allowed to sing because she was black, and then they created this big ceremony for her to sing outside. Okay, but she's facing, when she's singing, she's facing the Washington Monument, right? So now she sings Eva Maria. I did all this in my unicorn video. You can go back and watch it because it all ties to the unicorn, and the unicorn is freedom. Right? It represents freedom because you can't be caught, and it has the cornucopia, and the cornucopia is now your nectar of the gods, right? But when I translated the lyrics to the song, Eva Maria, it's really Hail Virgo, right? It's a ritual to Virgo, and Virgo is what's inside the spring triangle. Now, they use the song in the Fantasia movie because it's all to do with the rites of spring, and that's why Josh made the Washington triangle all to the rites because of, or the spring triangle for the rites of spring, because this ties to Dionysus, and this is what the Boots constellation represents, right? The wine, the nectar of the gods. So it's all ties together, even with their ceremonies that they're using. So Time magazine had Trump against the Washington Monument, but it's breaking, it's falling now. Now the tree is collapsing. Now he's standing in the Odin Philthought position with his legs, which is the hangman position. So I want to show you that. So that's the hangman, and usually he's upside down, but when he's standing upright, you can't really read that there, but it means you're going to be sacrificed. That's what it represents when the hangman is standing up straight. Now, in Norse mythology with Odin, Odin sacrifices himself to the tree. Jesus sacrifices himself to the tree. The Lion King gets sacrificed. Osiris gets sacrificed. You see, it's the male dominant figure gets sacrificed for the rest of us, right? So that we realize the truth is that you're supposed to, wish for freedom and not be tied to this realm. They're doing it in a way to show you that there's a way to be immortal. And then they sacrifice themselves to show you that. Okay, so this is what the whole story is with the Tree of Life. And the Tree of Life is really, or the Washington Monument being the tree, it's really like the cross, right? The cross is the toe cross that Jesus was hung on. So it's all the same thing. It just means that something has to be sacrificed for us to kind of awaken. So it's just, I ended up looking at the Trump playing cards. The Trump playing cards is which is elevated above the usual rank in trick-taking games. So it's a bit like being the trickster, right? Which is a little bit like Pan and Thoth is the trickster. And the English word trump derives from triumphi, a type of 5th century Italian playing cards. From the Latin triumphus, triumph, victory, procession. So it's an ancient, Latin word, or Greek, it's also a Greek word. The term for the hymn is Dionysus, sung in the procession in his honor. This is what this word means. Trump means Dionysus. Okay, so the whole Washington, White House is aligning to Dionysus, and the word means Trump in the playing cards. We're literally in a movie, I swear to God. Triumphi was the 15th century card game from which the tarot cards were designed from. So the tarot cards are designed from this Trump deck, like this Trump game. Okay, so yeah, we're being trumped, basically. Trump, it's just crazy. Anyhow, when I saw that it was linked, like the Trump, so basically the tarot cards are linked to Dionysus, and which comes from the word Trump, so it's just amazing. Behold, I shew you, we shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. Trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. Okay, so the dead are risen, but we are changed. There's a difference. And of course, Zeus, the god, the Olympian god, is all to do with lightning and thunder. And of course, the Washington Monument gets hit on Trump's birthday. It's just like, okay, that's a little crazy. What's really funny is the last Saturday Night Live, they have a new actor that's acting as Trump. And this was really funny. They go Laser and Swords, Dune, Game of Thrones, Virginia, Camelot. It's like, and then they're talking about all different movies. They have Santa Claus and Toads, which is all tied into, the Amanita muscaria mushroom. And they talk about little people and toads, and it's just, I just think, are you kidding me? So it's like they're dropping the symbolism, on Saturday Night Live, all to do, with DMT and ascension and everything. I was just like, this is like crazy. It's getting like nuts. It's like, it's almost like they know we know, and so then they're just gonna have fun with it. It's just fascinating. So the Washington Monument was built to commemorate George Washington. So it ties to George Washington again. So the construction of the Presidential Memorial began in 1848 and was halted for a period of 23 years. Well, that's 23 is your DNA. 23andMe, and your DNA is what activates you to become immortal, right? So they're saying here there was, it got stopped because of the American Civil War. In 1884, internal ironwork, the knoll, and the installations of the memorial stones were not completed until 1888. The cornerstone was laid on July 4th, 1848. The first stone was laid atop the unfinished stump on August 7th, 1880. So when that was laid, the cornerstone, Bacchus was in conjunction with the moon in Leo. Saturn and Vesta, which is really important because they're in Capricorn in conjunction. They need to be together. They're joined together, but they're on the tail of the whale, which is Pi Day. That's where the sun is on Pi Day on March 14th in 2025. The big conjunction there with Saturn and Neptune and Osiris. And then Ariadne was in conjunction with Uranus, which is heaven, which is also like the phoenix, right? Uranus is the phoenix. So that was happening in Pisces. And then Dionysus, which is really Bacchus, another name for him, he was in exactly where Trump is born, in the Silver Gate. Interesting. So the original architect wanted to also build it at 555 feet, which it is. And then they also had this big temple with Egyptian-styled winged sun and apse, around it. And anyhow, they ran out of money and it never got built like that. So, but yeah, so it was a ritual to Egyptian. And then they also have the Welsh stones. They have stones on the inside as you walk up it. There's all these stones, and they won't let people walk up on the staircase anymore because there's everybody that donated has like stone sculptures all up the staircase. I watched a video of it, and anyhow, they had one of the stones has Welsh wording because most of the founding fathers were Welsh and they were trying to fight against the British, right? So there was this Welsh language. So they're saying the wording was, the stone was imported from Wales, was donated by the Welsh citizens of New York. And it says, "My country, my nation, Welsh forever." The proverb, "The memory of the just is blessed." Was also, yeah, so anyhow, so it's really interesting to watch this video of going up inside of it. You should watch it. There's tons of, symbols, and one of the symbols is a pyramid with the sun around it, almost similar to the dollar bill. There's also another esoteric ascension symbol with the cherry trees. The cherry trees were donated from Japan. On March 24th, 2012, the United States Postal Service issued a C-tenant pair of stamps to commemorate the centennial of the gift of more than 3,000 cherry blossom trees from the city of Tokyo to the city of Washington. So here's the stamps. Artistic renditions in Japan and China often show that the ho-ho bird, a type of phoenix, surrounded by a bed of cherry blossoms. The bird brings the message of justice and fidelity and is a messenger of the sun who appears as an important beginnings. The lovely contrast of death and renewal, impossible to overlook in the carvings and paintings. Okay, so it's rebirth, right? China cherry blossoms reflect the ultimate femininity of women, beauty and sexuality. The fruit of the tree spirit has emblematic ties to the elixir of life that gives the gods their immortality. In the human realm, the juice symbolizes the immortality of the soul and reincarnation. Some of these implications has roots in a natural cycle of the cherry tree, namely spreading thousands of seedlings as it ensures its continuity. So, yeah, so there you go. It's all to do with immortality. Go figure. Of course it is. And that's why when Trump was going out the door at the end of his presidency, he changed a bill on the ingredients of cherry pie. I thought it was all to do with Pie Day, but maybe it is. Maybe it is to do with Pie Day, but it's also to do with the cherry, because the cherry has to do with the Washington Monument, and it has to do with immortality. And also, the cherry tree ties to George Washington as well. So this channel, this history channel, also has this video about George Washington and the cherry tree. And he supposedly went out and chopped down his father's cherry tree. And then his father didn't get mad at him. He was happy because he told the truth. And so the whole story is like this, you know, mystical story about telling the truth. He says, I can't tell a lie. So he's an honest soul, George Washington. And then it's used in mythology, like, you know, be like George Washington, always speak the truth. But in this video, they're saying that this didn't really happen. He didn't really cut down the tree. It was because this guy created a story about it. And then there was a painting with the author of the story. I think his name is Wise. You know, there's a painting, but it was all a made-up story. So anyhow, it was made up. For what reason? I think it has to do with representing the cherry tree and immortality, and they just needed to put that story in there somehow. And cutting down the tree, it's because the obelisk, and that's why with Trump on the Time magazine, the obelisk is broken, because the tree needs to come down, because the tree is causing people to be recycled back instead of ascending. It's not allowing people to get to higher consciousness. It's like it's causing the reloop in this realm. And I think the whole goal is to connect to the roots and not be the hanging fruit of the tree. And this is in the Bible on Mark 11:12. It says, Jesus says, may no one ever eat fruit from you again. And he wants to chop down the tree. Okay, so it's the fig tree. So then George Washington ended up doing a speech mentioning the fig tree. So the fig tree has been a symbol of peace and prosperity since the time of prophets, each man under his own vine and fig tree. George Washington cites this biblical metaphor in his letter of 1790 to Truro Synagogue to symbolize the equality of all Americans. So there you go. And then it says here, figs were linked to Demeter, which is Ceres, and the Greek goddess of fertility and agriculture, and were an offering to the Roman god Bacchus. So back to Bacchus, back to Dionysus. So there you go. It's all to do with the tree, and that's what the Washington Monument is. The very first tree on the planet was called sigillaria, and it looks like an obelisk, right? Now, the reason that I came to this was because of Saturnalia, which happens on the winter solstice, has the most famous day of Saturnalia is December 23rd, and it's called Sigillaria Day. And now a sigil has to do with paganism, right? It's what you make a sigil to make a ritual. So now Sigillaria Day has to do with phosphorus and being the bringer of the light. And my next video is going to tie all that in to Virgo. Okay, so there's a whole thing about Virgo and why they aligned this whole spring triangle to Virgo and created the Washington Triangle all to Virgo, which is August 13th, they said, was on top of Washington aligning. So I will do that in my next video, tying it all in. Now, somebody had mentioned this after my last video when I was talking about the Tesseract and the wrinkle of time and how to jump timelines has to do with the Tesseract. It was showing that in the movie. Now, the Shekinah is a symbol that was found on an obelisk. Now, the Shekinah is one of the oldest symbols of the Andes. It appears as a prominent element on the decoration of the Tello obelisk. Okay, because this guy Giulio C. Tello found it. So it's almost like an angle. It's like a square, but it's on an angle and has a pin in it. So here it is. You can see the square up there, and this is the like a Mayan or an Aztec obelisk. Now it's saying, you can see it there, and they're talking about it, and then above it, it says the profile face of the Hades. The Hades is a cluster of stars in Taurus, which is the bull, right? Which has to do with the labyrinth. So I'll get into that also in my next video, but it's interesting that, you know, it's this is all part of the obelisk, and it's a cube. So it's like, you know, what do they know that we don't know, which I think we're trying to know. So George Washington, also now known as an enthroned Washington, is a large marble sculpture, and it was commissioned by the United States Congress on July 14th, 1832, for the centennial of the U.S. President George Washington's birth on February 22nd. Next year is a 222 year, right? So he was born in 1732. It was completed in 1840. The statue was soon exhibited in the Rotunda, which is the Capitol building, of the United States Capitol, and then moved to the Capitol's East Lawn in 1843. So it was moved, and then it's saying here, enthroned Washington, great statue of Zeus Olympia, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and destroyed by late antiquity. So this sculpture was made in memory of the Zeus Olympian sculpture that was destroyed. So they're saying here, the image of the great example of freedom that will not survive without freedom itself. So there you go. It's all to do about freedom, but it's freedom for your soul. That's why there's a portal in the Capitol building up in the ceiling, because you got to get through that portal. And just yesterday, they found statues of Aphrodite and Dionysus unearthed in Turkey. Like, what's that? A collective awakening? Like, we're starting to learn about Dionysus and Bacchus, and like, they're coming out of the ground. It's like amazing. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. To me, it's just all divine, you know, and it's all about just seeing through the illusion and focusing and keeping your mind in a very balanced theta state so that you can go to ascension and get through this door at some point when this door opens. But my next video will be discussing all the different possibilities of next year and aligning to the sky and the mythology in the sky. We have 2 blood moons next year, and then the next one isn't till Pi Day in 2025. So, but these blood moons are super important next year. They tie to the Pan movie, and also they have a repeating cycle. Okay, so I just want to go through all that, and I'll do that and show you how this is all working. And please like and subscribe, help my channel grow, because I do think a lot of people are looking for answers, and I think finding the middle path is not an easy thing to do, especially with what's going on in the world. And if you can help make the algorithms get more, recommendations, I appreciate that. These videos take me almost 12 hours to put through together. So if you guys can just hit the button in appreciation, that would be awesome. And I also have started my recording for the online school. I just got to start to upload it and put it together. So I got 1 lesson made. So it's working, and it's just, we're learning to use the new software. But it shouldn't take me too long. So anyhow, bliss to you guys. Take care.